welcome to Ed Revolution. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
And so for our viewers, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm a founder of a company called 1904 Labs in St. Louis, and we're a technology consulting firm. As we've done this, one of the places we give back to is Live for Life Academy, and help those kids learn how to code. But I think you and I have talked about it before. When I first thought about it from a technology executive lens, it was, we're going to teach them how to code. But then it's like a 12-week program, and at the end they come into the office and show us what they've done. And it's scratch programming on the Android thing. But it dawned on me that it's not really what we're doing. What we're really doing is giving these kids a window into what they could do, which they have, coming from mostly city backgrounds, almost all city backgrounds. They have no idea that people in the cortex are doing this, and you can actually get paid to do this.
Yeah.
We had one young woman in the first cohort, this 2 or 3 years ago. She said, "You get paid to do this?" She's looking around the office and said, "Yeah, you get paid real well." And so then it dawned on me that what we really were is a vector of hope or awareness to these kids in sixth grade. That this exists. You could do this.
That's great. How old are what grades?
6 and 7.
6 and 7.
Yeah, and so their parents would come.
Yeah.
So then they were. It's unbelievable. They'd each show us what they did, and for us, it's pretty basic stuff, but they first exposure to this. And it's just like, and the parents would come and they'd get to see it. So some of the parents had not seen what was going on in the cortex, and so it was just like, wow.
I mean, what's been fascinating to me as I think about Ali Academy and revolutionizing education for kids is then thinking about the potential impact on the parents, right? And so I've had parents who show up to drop off their kids, and you can tell they live in the car.
Yeah.
So what would a job at 1904, paying really well, do not only just for the kid, like when they grow up in terms of becoming a coder or working, what would a job like that do for the parents? And what does that then mean for the kid while they're still in school to have a livable wage where they don't have to live in their car? Like what is the educational trajectory, and how does that change when the parents are more self-sufficient? And just think about child and parent has really started to, I don't know, just made me really think about what not just a school, but maybe kind of working with like the pastor you're talking about. Like what like a community building process could really look like. There are great, well-paying jobs here, but because of our educational system, they're going to pass over a lot of your kids and you as adults. And so we have like these test scores like matter because the results are people who are overlooked for these jobs. And if we want to really revitalize and build our community, they have to be able to access these jobs. And like questions like this, like they just have to be able to, like at the most basic level, right? They have to come in with these like basic skills. Right. And you have to be able to read, you have to be able to add, you have to be able to do basic math. Yeah. And then like solve problems and be a good person. And so that's also part of the frustration when people talk about even like tests. Oh, tests don't matter. Tests matter when you can't read. Right. Tests matter when you can't. And the tests show you that you can't add, you can't do basic math, because when they come into your office, you're not going to hire them.
I can't. It's just criminal that more kids, especially in the city, are not getting what they need, so they can go get those jobs.
Yeah, and I think that I felt that deeply. It's criminal. It is deeply. I mean, it actually hurts, like person, and it is criminal because you are tying people to a lifestyle that you wouldn't want for your kids, you wouldn't want for your neighborhood, and so to continue with the practices that we have seen don't work, right? To continue, we have, I think it's something like 18% proficiency rate, right? So you have 18% of students can read and write and do basic math on the grade level, and you have 82% that can't.
Yeah. And they're not going to be competitive. They're not going to be a candidate for those jobs.
Yeah. for me, the part that irks me about when we have conversations about SLPS and charter schools is is the i is the idea that without the charter schools, like the district schools would have been great, or that they have been great for the past 50 years, and now charter schools have come in and somehow are zapping them of resources and degrading their quality. When we've seen over decades that they have failed. And so I would say charter schools and district schools both need to shift, right? And that it is a win-win. Because any kid who wins, any kid who thrives, is a win for our community.
Right.
Like, I don't care where that kid goes.
Right.
And I think we all need to embrace that mindset. It's about kids and families. And in that, no one loses when they win.
I think you could have a twofold effect by having a school that was exposing the kids to these higher opportunities and these higher standards. The parents are going to get there. And so, I've talked about this as well. There's so much need. So I don't see what you're doing, what you're planning to do with Alley, as competitive to the other schools that exist because there's so much need.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Lift for Life's doing is they're going after the parents because they realize that if the kid is living in the car or doesn't have internet, which has really become, so pronounced in this COVID pandemic when they had to send the kids home, the children cannot learn if they don't have the right environment at home. Yeah. So you've got to go at it, and you got to help the parents as well.
Yeah.
Because they've got to be able to provide an environment that those kids are, Maslow's hierarchy and all those things, that they're not worried about basic needs. They're not. It's going to be a tough time for them to learn.
And then when you're in a failed educational system, oftentimes you realize that the parents are also the products of a failed educational system and have limited opportunities because of that. And so then you're, as a school, trying to figure out how do we help the kids in front of us, but also can we go back? Is there a way in which the system can right some of the wrongs in terms of what they've not been able to provide for the parents, that now these children also have to live with those consequences as well. So at 1904, about how many jobs would you say you have open right now?
If we achieve our goals next year, we're probably short 50 people.
50 people.
But in our world, finding 50 people is not an easy task. So, I would say in the tech world in general, it's really an inexhaustible supply. Because you think about the economy and how much it's driven by, we do three things technologically: software, data, and decision science or analytics AI. All companies need to be good at all three of those things. So if you're somebody that is good at those things, you'll never be without a job. So, the system today it's just not producing enough people.
And so what would you say the range of salaries are for those jobs?
Typically, entry level is 60 or 70,000. And from there, you can go to 150 or 200,000. You can live well. And if you're good, the key thing is you need to be good at the tech and you need to be good at the human. When we think about when we hire people, we have three characteristics. First is attitude. Are you a good human? You have your ego in check, and you understand that innovation or doing anything is a team sport. You're not going to do it all by yourself. Second is aptitude. You're smart. You have basic ability to learn, do new things. Because quite frankly, what you know now, you're going to need to know something else in 2 years. And then the third thing is, do you know something specifically now that we can use and put you on a project and things like that? But back to the aptitude and the attitude, are you a lifelong learner? But so you need, because you're going to need to learn more things as you go.
And like problem solving.
And problem solving, and be a good human, and be somebody that others want to be on the team.
So I have here example questions from the Missouri, the state assessment for math and ELA. I've here really just 4 questions. And can you look at these questions for me and tell me, and I guess this would go to the aptitude vein. Do you think these types of questions, this type of problem solving, right? Even, either explicitly just as is or more advanced. But this type of questioning or this type of skill is something you'd be looking for in terms of the aptitude for a potential candidate. You can take a minute to look at those 4 questions. Are these the types of problem-solving skills that you would expect a successful candidate to be able to kind of navigate or figure out?
Yeah, I think when I think about traditional route to being somebody that works for us, and then the coding schools and things like that, the one thing the shortcut coding schools lose is the ability to solve problems. Mm-hmm. They teach students how to code, mm-hmm. how to write software, but they aren't able to also focus on teaching them to think and solve problems. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to do that. So if you think about it, you need to be a good person to begin with. You need to have your ego in check and be somebody that others want to interact with. And then when you get that done, you need to be a good thinker. Mm-hmm. And then you need to be able to apply specific tools, because software, for example, is just a tool, like a paintbrush is, or mm-hmm. Any other discipline. It's only as good as the person wielding it, mm-hmm. ability to understand what needs to be done.
And so, what is your assessment currently of St. Louis, well, the schools in St. Louis, and how well they're preparing kids, young adults, to be able to do that type of thinking and do that type of work? Like what's the state of education currently?
I don't consider myself an expert mm-hmm. on that, but I think I like what I see in terms of the charters. Thinking about one, it's not always to college, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got other places you can go, but then even some of the charters we've been dealing with, when you think about us needing the educated computer workforce, it's kids need to learn over time. So back to what I talked to you about before, mm-hmm. These 6th and 7th graders, we weren't really going to be able to teach them to code in one mm-hmm. semester. Mm-hmm. We're really going to be able to expose them to that there is this career path called software development or software engineering, and you could do that. But then I believe the schools need to say, okay, we'll have a curriculum that semester over semester we have like an end in mind. We know mm-hmm. where they're headed. Not that you want to. It's not, school shouldn't be a trade school, but you should at least say, hey, these are the exit skill sets that people need, and we're going to give them opportunities to practice those semester over semester, probably in the high school.
And I think that girl you talked about who came to the office and people do this for
right. do this for work. Do this?
Exactly. I'm just imagining how transformative that could be if every child had a career that they were excited about. They were like, man, I get to do this and get paid. Like this right. is fun, and I get paid to do. If every kid came to school thinking that, think this is preparing me, this is getting me on that track, I think the outcomes would be drastically different. The motivation. Right? I always said, as a teacher, I would take a kid who believed in themselves and was motivated over a kid who had more knowledge, more skills any day, because the kid who is motivated, there'll be setbacks, but they won't stop. They'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I still want that job. I still want to code. I can still be a coder. I can still be whatever, and they'll keep on going until they're successful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you and I talked about this another time we were together. Is that particular young woman stopped doing it because she was super talented and she wanted to. I can't remember if it was dance or art, but her heart was in another direction. Yeah. And I had to send my daughter, my oldest daughter, you talk about STEAM and STEM. And one day she said to me, Dad, if you talk to me about STEM one more time, that'll be the last conversation we have. So it has to be, it's not a panacea.
Yeah.
It has to be a marriage of what they're good at and what they intrinsically want to do. Mm-hmm. It's that, so behavior first, but then attitude. What is it? What lights them up?
Yeah.
And then, so give them I think in the middle school, because that's the time they can start exploring and understanding the world around them.
Right. And that's why also people talk about representation matters, right? Because not only are you exposed to it, but then you can see yourself doing that, right? And and that's why like we want to really open the floodgates for like careers. Like, and it's not that we're pushing any particular career, but we want kids to know about a ton of different opportunities. Because something's gonna light their fire. Something they're gonna be excited about and be motivated to pursue. And even if it's not your number one thing, you can still gain expertise and a marketable skill in a backup industry or something else that you use to actually fund your actual passion. And right now, I don't think for that, it's actually not just schools in St. Louis. I don't think schools like nationwide are really doing that. They're not really having kids like explore like passions and different jobs and like making a difference like when as their kids to really motivate them. I think we're really glued to this. You know, we teach kids a whole bunch of discrete skills and information, and then later we say, yeah, you're gonna apply it later. Yeah, later it's gonna be useful. But like right now, I'm just doing what seems to be busy work, right? And even as a teacher, I hated teaching things that didn't have any application, like immediate application, because it was boring. It was boring for me. It was boring for the kids. Everyone was like, "Why are we here?" And so that's what we are really trying to do at Ali, and I think working with other schools, Lift for Life, and other schools, to see like how can we really flip like this educational model on its head, and actually let's start with like interesting careers, and let's start with actions that would make a difference in our neighborhood, in our community, in our lives, and then let's see what are the skills necessary to do that. What are the skills necessary or the knowledge necessary to make a change or to pursue this career? I think that's like motivating. That's like powerful. Like I want to come to school for that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one of the driving forces at 1904 Labs, we adopted Stephen Covey's 7 Habits as our company handbook. And, you know, one of his second habit is begin with the end in mind. Where is it you're trying to go? You know, he talks about whether that end in mind is your funeral and you want people to speak highly of you or come closer to your current day. And so I agree with you with kids saying, you know, I'm not an educator, so I don't know when the right time to do it is, but my observation tells me middle school, where you can start to expose kids to lots of different opportunities and see where they light up, and then work with them saying, okay, well, that's what you're interested in. Let's work back from that, and you know, figure out what you need to go do that. It could be something that, hey, you're going to need to go to college to do that, so I got to get you ready to do that, or you can do that right out of high school, and so let's get you ready, and do it kind of the pull model rather than the push model. It's like everybody needs, you know. When we were back in Boston before we moved back here, my daughter was going to Montessori school, and I was a big fan of the Montessori, where you let the education meet the kid where they are, and they'll eventually learn everything they need to learn. But based on what they're naturally motivated to go do, and then, you know, I agree with you. So, and the parent motivation. It's not that you really want. Like I have teenagers. I mean, you can't make them do it. We're right in exam time right now. It's like, hey, did you stay last night talking to my 17-year-old son? He wants to go to college. You know, hey, are you ready for chemistry and math today? And he was on his phone talking to his buddy. Like, you getting any closer to being ready? You know? But it is about intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, at the end of the day, right? It has to be.
It has to be. I mean, because we had to sit him down, and we've had to have him sit down with his tutor and have a talk with him. Say, if you say you want to go to college, you know, then these things you're doing aren't consistent with what you say you want to do. Do you really want to go to college? And so it did kind of motivate him, but schools just don't operate that way. And I think it's harder to do the bigger the school is, but if you had a school where you really locked into the kid and figured out where they want to get them motivated to go some direction, and then say, okay, here's what we need to do. And you're driving the bus.
Right. And it's not a lifelong commitment. It's just something I want to pursue. Right. And you can change, you can change course at any time. But when you have that motivation to pursue something, it's different. It's very different. I mean, I think we talked about this as well. Like my daughter and my son are very different. Like my daughter is very motivated to do a lot of different things. My son, not so much. Right. And so I'm trying to figure out what more can I expose him to so that he can drive? Because right now it's very much me pushing him to do everything and
Exactly.
and everything. Where it's like it's a lot of work for me, and I don't know how at the end of the day how effective it's actually going to be. Right, he's about to go to college. I'm like, I am not going to be calling you to see if you've done any of your work. This is like all on you. So if I can get him to find that motivation now,
right,
I think he'll be successful in whatever he does.
Right. But it has to come from within.
Yeah.
And so a school that's driven to tap into people's passions, because if they get to a certain point, I mean, it doesn't mean you never give up on anybody, but it's they just waste time. When they finally get motivated, then it's harder.
Yeah.
When they're out of school. So one of the things that I like about the organizations we've connected with, so in addition to Lift for Life Academy, we're connected with St. Patrick's Center. We're doing some work with them. We're connected with Tabernacle Community Development. They're doing the same. Jeff Vanderbilt. And then Mission St. Louis, which is helping those men that have been in the justice system kind of get on a different path. Because those kids may have a parent that got off on the wrong track, and to help this child, you got to help the parent too. And it does take a school can't do it by itself.
I feel like a lot of people are like the idea, like helping kids, like what monster isn't isn't for helping kids,
right?
But there's a lot of pushback for like helping adults, right? Who maybe have made some or who have had tough lives and had tough decisions to make, and the outcomes aren't great currently. But like helping adults, right? And even when you realize that these adults are still connected with kids, like it's hard to help a kid and not help the parent, right? And
you have to get over that. You have to get over and I personally had to get over that. That says, for however it happened, you got to help both. And now, granted, just like the kid, the adult has to grab the ring and has to say, "I want to go. I'm on the wrong path, and I want to come over here." But you've got to give them an opportunity to do so. And because if they're not, that child has a limited opportunity, I think.
And I think especially when we know historically there are groups of people, particularly Black people, that we've actually denied, like categorically, certain opportunities to. Now that people are adults and don't have that opportunity or haven't necessarily made the right decision because they haven't had a lot of opportunities, it's hard for me to then be like, oh, well, we don't deserve to, or they don't deserve like a second chance.
Yeah, I agree.
Or they don't deserve like all this opportunity when we know we've handicapped them from historically, right, from the time that they were in school. And so now and as I'm starting more and more, I think about Ali Academy. Me and one of our co-designers were talking, and then we were like, "Is this even a school anymore?" Because just the need to transform a community, as you said, is actually beyond just a school, right? Because a school like educates kids. Like I think or at least that's how we've come to know schools.
Right.
And for community transformation, I think it has to be different, right? It can't just like give kids like discrete skills, right? It has to do more than that.
Well, and I think at a minimum has to be aware of what environment that child is in. So if you're going to get them, you're going to reach them and motivate them, and you have to be aware that you've only got them during the school day. And what are they dealing with when they're not hitting out with you? And try to that's what I'm saying. So some of the other charter schools are going after, the next wave is to go after the parents in a good way to help minister to the family. So that the child who's in that family has all the opportunities to focus. Still accountable, right? You and I talked about that too. It's not, the child still needs to grab the reins and decide to go. But you got to be mindful that there's a limit to what the child can do if the family's not. And so that's what I like about what Pastor Andre is doing up in Jeff Vanderbilt, because it's a community. Let's revitalize the community, and the school is a major component of it. It's not the only thing. It's got to be safe. That's the other thing. There's got to be, one of the things they're trying to do is make sure there's jobs
Mm-hmm.
that people can go to that are close by. You just need a working community. Like in Fairground Park, it's a great park, but it's on its it's down on its luck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another part of the community.
Yeah. The at the last camp we had for our kids, we toured different neighborhoods and we talked about what is necessary in the neighborhood. They're like, walkability was a big thing. Like they should be able to go to restaurants. They should be able to walk to work. They should there are different things that you need in a community, and the kids themselves identify with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like things they want in their community. Like they not only want a school, they want a good school, but they want recreation. They want places that they can play.
Right. Safe.
Yeah.
Let's be safe.
Yep.
Yeah, because like a Fairgrounds Park's a good example. What a cool park.
Mm.
I wouldn't say it's that safe, and certainly so you need to revitalize the whole community so people feel safe. Because if you're not feeling safe, that's another problem.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sean. I really appreciate it for this session of Ed Revolution.